Could you please join me in welcoming our next speaker, Phil Edmands, who is the CEO of Rio Tinto, Australia.
Thank you. I would like to acknowledge Garma Chairperson and Senior Traditional Owner, Mr. Galarrwuy Yunupingu. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand, the Gumach and the Yolngu people generally, and pay my respects to their elders and ancestors past and present. The Honourable Nigel Scullion, Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Philip Strawn, CEO, Bauxite and Alumina, Rio Tinto Alcan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Rio Tinto and Rio Tinto Alcan's Gove operation here in northeast Arnhem Land, I would like to thank you for the warm welcome I've experienced in my first visit to Garma. Perhaps I could start with a few personal reflections. My experiences of issues affecting Indigenous people have been in just a few areas. In native title and heritage matters, in representing Indigenous applicants for mining tenements, and in Warden's Court, that is mining court work in Western Australia. Representing Indigenous applicants for mining tenements took me into the homes of Indigenous people in remote communities to obtain witness statements. When people explained their difficult relationship with the welfare system and their convictions for relatively trivial offences, I was struck by how their interactions with the system seemed to institutionalise their disadvantage. Separately, my Warden's Court work meant that I sat through petty sessions in remote locations as I waited for mining matters I was involved in to be called on. Many of the petty sessions matters involved Indigenous defendants. Often the charges didn't make any sense to me. I remember one case involving a teenager charged with stealing just under $3 worth of petrol siphoned from a car. He had a long history of petrol sniffing. He was obviously severely mentally impaired by that experience, and he didn't seem to understand in any way the charges that had been brought against him. It seemed to me that he needed help rather than a criminal conviction. These experiences, as well as my work with non-Indigenous advisors on Indigenous matters, taught me a few things. The first thing they taught me is how different my life has been from the lives of Indigenous people, and how little I really know about Indigenous experience. The second thing they taught me is that non-Indigenous people and businesses can help Indigenous people and businesses in many ways. They can provide resources, they can provide jobs, they can provide business opportunities, and they can provide business expertise. But what they can't do is speak for Indigenous experience. Only those who have lived that experience can do that. It is always possible for non-Indigenous people to learn more about Indigenous culture, but they will never completely know what it is to be Indigenous. It follows that it is Indigenous voices that are needed to come up with solutions to Indigenous issues. The non-Indigenous sector can, as I said, provide resources, but Indigenous voices are best placed to advise on how those should be deployed. Put another way, the non-Indigenous sector can help with the what, but Indigenous people themselves need to provide the how. As an example, businesses such as Rio Tinto can outline what skills are required to be job ready. They can provide training resources, and they can offer jobs to those who are job ready. But Indigenous voices are likely to know how training for Indigenous people in disadvantaged and challenged communities is best delivered. The final thing my earlier experiences have taught me is that it is not just what assistance is offered, but the form in which it is offered. So going back to my jobs example, it is not helpful to fudge for Indigenous applicants what is needed to be job ready, and so create a kind of second class of applicant. People do best when they are treated on equal terms with everybody else, and where there are appropriate expectations of them. In other words, where they are shown appropriate respect. So if a business is experiencing difficulty in finding sufficient numbers of job-ready Indigenous applicants, it is much better to work with the community to try and remedy the skills deficit than to accept applicants who are not actually job-ready and so set those applicants up for possible failure. I've come to Garma then not to lecture on how things have been or should be done, or to speak as an expert when I am not, but to listen and to learn about how we can work together to ensure that Indigenous people have the same opportunities as other Australians. And the Yolngu people themselves must be at the very heart of shaping and delivering those opportunities. Before coming back to that point, though, I would like to briefly refer to Rio Tinto's Gove operations. You are all aware of the difficult but necessary decisions that we have had to make regarding our Gove refinery over the past year, given current economic circumstances. Suspending alumina production and focusing on bauxite operations is a significant change for our business, the traditional owners, and our local community. And I can assure you this was not a decision taken lightly or before all other options had been canvassed. On behalf of Rio Tinto, I would like to thank the traditional owners and the Northern Territory Government for working positively with us during the transition. The ongoing bauxite operation will play an important role in sustaining the North East Arnhem Land regional economy by retaining local jobs, providing opportunities for local suppliers, and delivering benefits to traditional owners. No matter what the economic cycle, though, I would like to reiterate that Rio Tinto remains committed to working in partnership with the traditional owners, businesses, governments, and community organisations to help provide opportunities for Yolngu people in this region. We are continuing to invest in the township of Nhulunbuy, which remains an important hub for regional services and the home for our workforce. In addition to its current community investment programs, Rio Tinto is also committed to supporting new economic activities in the region, using company assets such as surplus houses, port facilities, and the Gove Airport wherever possible. And Rio Tinto and the Northern Territory Government have committed $4 million to establish a new regional economic development entity. This organisation will work across government and the private sector to identify priority economic development opportunities, promote the region to prospective investors, and use available assets and funding to attract new activities and business. Finally, we have appointed a team to focus on providing ongoing support for regional development initiatives and to help grow the capacity and capability of Indigenous business. In this context, we share a belief with the Yolngu people that the creation of sustainable Indigenous-owned businesses is necessary for successful economic development in the long term. We recognise very clearly that far more work is needed to create a diverse regional economy in which the Yolngu people are directly participating through employment or by owning and operating their own businesses. But the start of that work has begun. You will shortly see the presentation from the Gumatj Corporation, which outlines the way in which this regional economy is taking shape, and I commend the forward thinking of Gilroy, Jawa, Klaus, and the leadership team at Gumatj. Rio Tinto Alcan, ceding the mining rights and sharing mining expertise and experience, has been pleased to support the Gumatj clan in their efforts to create a sustainable mining operation at Dupna Plateau. A memorandum of understanding was signed in June 2013, and the Gulkula Mining Company has now submitted its exploration licence and mine development plan. From next month, we will be assisting with an exploration program to prove up the quantity and quality of potential bauxite reserves at Dupma Plateau. Speaking personally, it is great to see this initiative coming to fruition. As I mentioned at the outset, one of my early experiences was acting for Indigenous applicants for mining tenements. Unfortunately, those tenements, although granted, have never been developed. Here on Dupma Plateau, an Indigenous community is not simply seeking to work for a mining company. It will own and operate that mining company. And everything starts small. Rio Tinto means Red River. And the company got its name because it started with one very small mining operation on the Red River in Spain. In this context, it is my pleasant duty to announce today that Rio Tinto is strengthening its partnership with Yolngu people by committing 2.4 million to support the Gumatj clan in establishing a mine training and operations centre open to all to coincide with the potential bauxite mine at Dupna Plateau. This is an excellent initiative that will be an important catalyst for Yolngu people across the region to develop life skills and training needed to establish successful careers in the mining industry, whether here at Gove or elsewhere in the region in Australia, and whether adding to the almost 1,700 Indigenous people who are working and employed by Rio Tinto in Australia, around 8% of our workforce, or working for others. Importantly, though, Rio Tinto's involvement with this initiative is consistent with what I mentioned at the outset. We are providing material support for the initiative, but this is a project being shaped and driven by Yolngu people, sensitive to the style of training delivery that will best suit their culture and circumstances. Finally, I was very pleased to be part of the official opening yesterday of the Garma Knowledge Centre, which Rio Tinto has helped to deliver. It is an excellent facility in a really beautiful place that will play a critical role in the development, learning and training of Yolngu people and provide an opportunity for others to learn firsthand the rich culture of this part of the world. And on that point, can I just add a personal reflection? I was born and I grew up in Zimbabwe. I came to Australia when I was 20. Decades later, on one of my many returns to Africa, in this case, working on a Rio Tinto project in West Africa, I was invited by some of the Indigenous Africans who were working with us to go to a musical function and enjoy a meal with them. I absolutely loved that evening, but I suddenly realized during the course of that evening that this was the first time in my life that I'd really experienced African Indigenous culture. And the culture I had missed was wonderful. I loved it. I'd grown up in Africa, but never really known my Indigenous neighbour. Many Australians do not know their Indigenous neighbours either. What is so good about Garma is that the Yolngu are saying to me and to all other Australians, come neighbour, or as it was described yesterday, come brothers and sisters, let us show you the Yolngu culture and you will see that it is wonderful too. So thank you very much for the honour of attending this event and being asked to help welcome people to it. It is my privilege and I feel humbled on behalf of Rio Tinto as a major supporter to join the Yothu Yindi Foundation in welcoming everyone to this year's event. In doing so, I want to acknowledge the huge work that has gone into organising this great event. I look forward very much to listening and sharing with you. Thank you very much.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to